It's episode 56 of the Improv London podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Moses, and this week's guest is Charlie V. Martin.
I learned to improvise.
Hey! Yay!
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me along.
Thank you for coming along. This is one of my favourite places that I have recorded. Perhaps we shouldn't reveal where we are, but...
We are on some very classy chairs.
We are.
For the listeners at home.
Oh, what a shame it's just an audio medium. You will never know, but these are the best chairs.
It's getting comfy.
Just to get comfy.
I can cross my legs on this.
Nice.
That's important in a chair.
Yeah, and there's also, what are these bits called?
Just wings.
The wings, they've got wings.
Headrest wings.
Headrest wings.
For when you're an old man of a girl like me.
Yes, and...
A little snooze.
yes.
I hope I don't make you fall asleep.
Well, the beautiful thing is we're recording this, so I will at least be able to listen to it again later
Yeah,
and
do
enjoy
that.
it.
I'll just keep going.
Well, as I say to every guest, I'm on every podcast, so if you want to keep going and I don't say anything...
You get up and leave.
I won't do that. If I don't say anything, then I'm perfectly happy with that.
Okay.
I won't get up and leave. It's a bold choice. If I do that. Right, okay.
Right.
So, shall we talk about Edinburgh?
Yes,
You've got a show.
I do. Let's go into Edinburgh. There are a lot when people say, "Let's talk about Edinburgh." I'm often like, "Yeah, that's where I was born. Yeah, that's where I'm from. That's where my mum and dad are." But yeah, no, I realise there's a bigger context to the word. Yes, I am taking Dante's History of the Banished. It's my first solo show. Going up the last 2 weeks, and it's like I should really get better at working out how to describe it. It's a character show. There's some improv elements in it. Some parts are heavily improvised. Some characters are more scripted and sometimes a bit more stand-up like. But yeah, I think improv is a big flow through of the show. Historical comedy as well, I should say.
So where did the idea originate?
That's a good question, because it's kind of a bit of a fever dream of lots of different things. So the concept of the show is that I play Dante as in the Italian poet, and he was, what a lot of people don't know is that he was in exile when he wrote Inferno and the Divine Comedy, his masterpiece work. And I studied that at uni. I studied Italian and modern history, not necessarily the modern history of Italy, but sometimes some honours classes. But yeah, so I've always had an interest in history. I also studied Italian. I also lived in Italy for a year. And kind of had all that in the back of my head. And I remember reading Divine Comedy, well, just Inferno at uni and thinking, well, this is mental. There's like, you're reading it at like 3 a.m. before an exam and you're looking at the notes and they're like, people say that when he meets this deer, it's an allegory for Jesus. And it's like, no, it's not. It's just a deer. The first chapter is him running around in the woods being a bit lost. And I just kind of, at the time, I was doing an improv show at St. Andrews with Blind Mirth, and we used to do a thing where we'd tell a story to start off, and we'd kind of finish it by getting suggestions, and then we'd go on and do the show. And I so happened to be studying this at the time, and so I talked for a bit about my observations of this, and actually someone from that group said, "Oh, that was really cool, you should turn that into some material." Spin it on 6 years later. I was like, yeah, maybe I should. Did nothing with it. But yeah, I'd kind of always wanted to kind of put together a show for the Fringe, but I wasn't sure what it was going to be. And this has been in development for about 2 years now. 2.5, 6 years if you count that first thing. And yeah, it came about. It started with Dante as a character. So I had that information in the back of my head and like funny things that I like about that. And then I do Glitch. And there's this Italian, there's not an Italian puppet. There's a puppet that I often do with an Italian voice because it's got live hands, it gesticulates very well. And we did a show where I just felt like he suited. I did a show where he was Italian, and there was a game that we ended up playing where I kept coming up with ridiculous, what do you call it, like ridiculous traditions that happen in his village when people die. It's like, oh, well, we do this, and it's like, it just, every time something happened to the other characters, like, well, in my village, we do this thing. And it was a fun character and people liked it. And then at Glitch cabaret shows, we host sometimes as well as puppets. And I hosted as this big fluffy yellow hand gesticulating puppet. And I did it in Italian again. And I really enjoyed it. Felt very comfortable being that puppet, and I started doing some games as that, like think of a number. I decided this was my new warm-up game where I'd go, think of a number, and they'd think of it, and I'm like, is it 72? And they're like, no, and I'm like, you win! And it's basically, you can't lose, and I do it a bunch of times, and then I'm like, okay, I know what you're thinking, it's rigged. So I prove it to you, okay, think of a number.
I'm thinking of a number.
Is it 5?
No.
Oh, you don't win.
Oh.
Try again, okay, think of a number.
Right, okay.
Is it 1,000,004?
No.
You win!
Hey!
And it's just like, you can't win or lose, but it's amazing how many people like want to be like, I don't know what to say, and I'm like, you just say the honest answer. And it's just, because it's just foolish and silly, and it just makes people feel proud of themselves even though they've accomplished nothing. Which is how you want an audience to feel. So I kind of had that, and I was having fun doing that occasionally when I was hosting as Glitch. And then I remembered I had this other Dante, like I have a lot of stories from when I was in Italy and studying Italian literature and stuff, and I thought, well, if I can kind of combine that, and I was like, well, why don't I just make this character Dante? And that's kind of how that sort of started going. And then I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to do other characters that are, because I find exile, banishment, a really odd theme, a really interesting theme, a very odd punishment is what I maybe should have said. Because it's kind of like, it's not as dark as death. You can't have actually a lot of shows are about death, but there are fewer shows about like, let's forget about them. And I thought that was a weird concept that kind of comes back quite a lot in history and in literature. So I thought, well, maybe I could think of like other people to do that. So it started off with just him being, and his whole thing was he was in exile and really sad about it. And he's like, I just want to go home, because he loves Florence. And if you go to Florence now, there are statues of him everywhere. And I don't think someone said, he's not even buried there. I'm not sure, I should check, I should know that. But in my head, in my head and in the show, all the characters are still out there living somewhere. We've just kind of forgotten, they're in exile and that's it. So they're just kind of timeless, ageless characters. So I started doing Dante January 2016. And that kind of took its own form working on that. And then I started looking at Napoleon, who is more improvised. And again, that was kind of stitching up, oh, this is a character I do for friends that I find quite funny. I'm like, oh, actually, I could make that Napoleon, and it's Napoleon. And now I'm doing Eve as well. And King Lear, who actually isn't he's the one that banishes people, but he in himself, by doing that, sort of exiles himself, you could say. Yeah. Making it sound more clever than it is. Yeah. That's a lot of the show as well. But yeah, so I'm doing King Lear, and I think if I could do the show a part 2, because I'm already like, oh, I want to do that character, and I want to do that. And there are characters that I threw away because I couldn't quite work them out. Like I wanted to do Mary Queen of Scots, who's a very big part of my life because I've spent a lot of my life talking about her, doing tours and things in Edinburgh. So I still would like to come back and figure her out at some point, and I'd also like to do Tinkerbell. And I've been working on bits with her as well, but I need to not get distracted by Tinkerbell because I've got 4 other characters that need to be, polished off for August. So yeah, so that's the very long story of how that came about.
So you mentioned in regards to Napoleon that you have a character you do for friends. What do you mean by that?
Yes. So prior to Napoleon, you've seen Napoleon. Napoleon is basically,
I've seen Dante.
Oh, you've not.
And I've seen Eve.
Oh,
I
right,
haven't
you've not seen Napoleon. Okay, so for Napoleon, it's a mixture of. So the bit that's from this other character I used to do was my impression of a French person. My show suddenly sounds like really offensive. It's really not. Everything's done with love. I started doing this character on my sister's hen party in Paris called Vivienne the Parisienne, where I basically point at things and say no. And that's the whole character. Because my thing about, I love French people, especially French women, because they're very classy. Again, I'm making a massive generalization, but French people are known for being like, no, we'll do it this way, because why would we do it another way? Because this is the French way. And it's like when you read these articles, there's a book put out a while ago called French Women Don't Get Fat or something like that, and then there was French Women Don't Get Wrinkles. And I think, I've not read them, but from what I've gathered is it's because they're like, we use one skin product that my mother used, and her mother used, and we don't eat, this is how we've done things for generations, and I just think that's really funny. They're just no. There's all these fads that Americans and British people kind of really go in for, and the French are like, no. So yeah, when I was in Paris, I started doing this. It's basically it won't work on the podcast.
So
I would
it's
do
just for me.
So if you could just, imagine, so I'm touching a bottle on the table and maintaining eye contact with Stuart, and it's just no. 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 And it's just that over and over. And pointing at buildings, pointing at Tupperware, and it's just for some reason really funny. and there's I don't know why, and so when I say it was fun for friends, because we're on this holiday, and it wasn't an impression of a particular French person, it's just a thing I kept doing. It also that actually evolved from another thing I did. I was in a shop trying to buy a plastic basin to put in my sink, for washing dishes.
Yeah.
And I needed it to be round. No, I needed it to be square, because we had a square sink to this shop. And Harry was like, okay, and he was like, what are you looking for? And I was like, oh, I need a basin, but you don't seem to have any the right shape. I need a square one, and you only have round ones. And he just kept pointing at basins going, this one? And I was like, no, it's round. He's like, this one? This one? And I was like, no. And he's like, this one. It was for 5 minutes, he pointed at 18 different basins that were all, and I was like, I can see them all. I know they're all wrong. I'll go somewhere else, it's fine. And I told my sister that story, and so it's just being pointing at things and going, this one, and it's all wrong. And then somehow that evolved into pointing at things and saying no. In a really judgmental fashion, and then that somehow became French, and then that somehow became Napoleon. So there's a bit. So when I'm being Napoleon, I wear a newspaper hat for being Napoleon, like the shape of a Napoleon hat. I've drawn on the little floret thing. And because, again, I did look at fancy dress Napoleon hats, but they all seemed too fake to me. For some reason, a newspaper seemed more authentic. It is a French newspaper that I use, though. It's Le Monde.
Wow.
So he was trying to take over the world. And yes, so to me, I mean, no one else sees that, but in my head, I enjoy that.
So you have to go and buy a new copy of Le Monde every time?
No. I've bought one, and there's several pages in a newspaper. So there you go. You only need one double-page spread to make a paper hat. God, Stuart. You've never made a Napoleonic hat before? But yeah, so I do have to make new ones quite regularly. So I wear that, which in itself, but like I don't ever talk about it because I'm like, I'm obviously not Napoleon. I'm obviously not an old Frenchman who's actually dead. But like, you know, I'm obviously not a French general. I'm a 26-year-old Scottish girl, but in a French accent. And so I have this blue blazer that, this big blue velvet blazer that I stick my hand in my blazer, and I have this newspaper hat, and I wear my glasses still. When I come on, I just point at things people are wearing, and I go up to them and I touch them, and I'm like, what is this? And they're like, and I was like, no. It's as if I'm judging what they're wearing. And I feel like that gives me, because Napoleon's whole thing is he's so powerful, and I feel it's one of the things I'm always nervous about is that I don't command a lot of power, command a lot of attention, but Napoleon has to. So I stand very still. I only walk side to side as well as Napoleon. I don't walk forward or back, and I don't turn my back. Because for some reason I find that's more intimidating and less like, you know, if someone wants to cut, they have to move to me, and I move very slow if I do move at all. And it makes people kind of uncomfortable, but it's just intimidating. And then pointing at things people are wearing and saying no, and not letting them finish their sentence. It's funny in the same way it was funny with Vivienne the Parisienne, but B also just gets that sense of like, what the hell is going on? And then from there, occasionally I do say I like something. I say bon, and they're like, oh yeah, and I'm like, you can keep that. And I ask them who they are, and then I say I don't care. And then from there, it's just me helping. I help them with life questions.
Right.
I give life advice as Napoleon, but not really so people ask me questions, and the more truthful they are, the better. So I've had questions from like lots of people thinking about quitting their jobs and things. Someone asking me about what to do about the fact that their flat they spend too much money on toilet roll. Lots of different things. Someone saying that his girlfriend wants him to shave his back, like stuff like that. And then I try to give them the most rational advice I can. And sometimes I have to question, because a lot of the time they're asking a question and it's not the actual problem. They're joking or something, and it's like getting right down to what's the real problem here. The problem's with you or with this person, and this is what you've got to do to be happy if that's what you want. And it's just like ruthlessly rational advice, which is actually often very good advice. But then quite often I top it off with a bit of advice that would only matter if you're Napoleon.
Right, okay.
So like, don't invade Russia in the winter. And it's like, that's only useful life advice if you're Napoleon. But the rest of it I think is usually quite useful.
And it's the juxtaposition between the very rational and sensible advice and the fact that you are an exiled dictator in a hat.
In a paper hat that I've made myself.
Newspaper.
Yeah, because I figured that if he were alone on an island for some time, he probably, in his head, he's like, I should still have a hat. And if they'd taken his hat off him, he's like, I'm going to make a hat, I'm going to make this hat, because who cares? I'm the one wearing it. So it's therefore a good hat. Like, well, he was the first one. Everyone else used to wear their hats forwards, long ways forwards, like Nelson. And he's like, I don't want to wear my hat like it, so like that. So he turned it on its side, and he's like, this is how I wear my hat now. No one's going to argue with it because I'm Napoleon.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Napoleon, and I love that's what that whole thing is. It's just like, I'm Napoleon. You're going to fight me on this? You're going to argue with me on this? And it's like, you don't argue with Napoleon. You don't try to outsmart him. If you've got a problem, this is the way to solve it. If you don't want to solve it that way, then that's your problem. and it's good because I really like playing Napoleon, and a lot of you get a real mix of questions, and then some questions are quite simple. One gig I had 3 different guys say that they wanted to quit their jobs, and I'm like, what is it with young boys needing to quit their jobs or something, like needing more, because their whole thing was like, I need more flexibility, and I'm like, why do all the boys here need more flexibility? And so it gets the room all laughing at each other, and they're laughing at themselves a lot as well, because they're realizing what they see as a problem is actually often their own fault. So that's Napoleon, which is the most improvised segment, I reckon, of the show.
Yeah.
Because it completely is on the audience asking me questions and me answering them.
Have you done any research or, read any agony aunts, or is this just wisdom that you've drawn from yourself?
Research as to how to help problems,
yes,
rather than research about Napoleon.
We'll come back to Napoleon research in a second.
Well, I know.
Fair enough.
Well, the thing is, it's going with the most rational answer. I suppose a lot of it actually is drawn upon CBT. So I've done cognitive behavioral therapy before, and I find a lot of time I've ever spent in therapy or doing this is about breaking it down to what is this actually about? What is the actual problem? So someone's saying, oh, I'm just really stressed. And I'm like, so what are you stressed about? And it's like, I'm stressed about my wedding. It's like, why are you stressed about your wedding? It's like, I've got so much to organise. What do you have to organise? I've got this, and this to organise. I'm like, okay, go book the band. And that's it. Like, and it's doing that. It's paring it down to like, the thing, the real actual thing. And it's kind of taking that approach to things, which I think is probably the healthiest way to approach problems. And sometimes Napoleon is maybe a bit too rational, being like, cut them out your life. He's like, nope, no. But it's showing you those are the options. And yes, I draw a lot from that and my own experience of dealing with my own anxieties and problems, and how I've learned to deal with it is in a similar way. So.
I mean, I like to think that people might take advice from your Napoleon that they wouldn't take from their friends. That,
yes.
Sometimes you need
Napoleon Bonaparte to in a paper hat to be telling you how to live your life. It's true, because it's that same thing also of quite often you know the right answer.
Yeah.
And it's guiding you to that. And also, that whole thing of you would speak to a friend differently than you'd speak to yourself, and so they do know the answer. It's you, like Napoleon speaks to you how you should speak to yourself, of being like, come on now.
Napoleon's not worried about offending your feelings or ruining the friendship. He just says it as it is.
He says it as it is, but he also, I try not to be insulting. Like, I put things in a bigger context, and I think it's that second person, because I think maybe the body hair one is a good example of taking it beyond just the I don't know if I should shave my back or not because my girlfriend wants me to, and it's like, well, that is an issue of, are you comfortable with your body hair? And also maybe she needs to understand that the reason some people have extra body hair is because it wicks the sweat when you perspire, and if you don't have that hair on your back, then the water will just drip right down, and that will be more uncomfortable. So it's like, Napoleon breaking down the biology of your back hair is kind of just sets it in a different plane. And you'd be like, yeah, no, I think I do need my back hair. I don't need to shave my back hair because actually I need my back hair. It's like giving a different perspective of the problem, or maybe adding to the problems. I don't know. But I kind of feel like at the end of the day, I want to give good advice, but they're the ones taking advice from a girl in a paper hat saying she's Napoleon. And if it works out badly, well, maybe they should have thought that through.
So did you do much research for the character of Napoleon?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I kind of knew sort of stuff about him anyway from studying history, and he generally pops up quite a lot. And yeah, I listened to a few different Radio 4 documentaries, because also they tend to be like, we have to be down the middle, we have to be really fair, and so it's kind of it's like an overview of him. And so yeah, I did quite a bit so that I always have stuff in my back pocket if I do want to whip out advice that's only relevant if you're Napoleon. And I guess that kind of comes from interest in him in history generally, because it is mad. Like, he crowned himself as emperor. He was like, I'm going to do this now because I can, and I'm good. And he invited. There was a line, I don't know where I read it, but I like bringing it up, even though a lot of other people don't find it as funny. But he invited the Pope to his coronation, so it seemed more legit. Yes. And I'm like, that's hilarious. Of just being like, I'm just gonna make myself emperor of France. I know, I'll invite the Pope, and he'll come, and everyone will be like, oh, well, the Pope's here, so I guess it's okay. And it's just like, what was going on? That was fine. And he's like, just like doing this, and like, yeah, I'm good at, but, you know, in many ways, he was a brilliant general. He's a very interesting character. So I just think, like, that amount of confidence is hilarious. But nice that he actually had some intelligence, and also he did do a lot. Like, I talk about, like, fix the sewer system and the education system, because he did that, and a lot of the stuff he did by being just rational is like, I need my people to be healthy because otherwise they can't fight for me. Well, I'm going to need to fix the sewers. It's like, maybe not necessarily done out of affection for his people, but the rational answer. I don't know. So there are historians who know a lot more about Napoleon than I do.
But maybe they don't give us good advice.
Yeah, maybe. And they certainly don't present it the same way. They don't present their findings late night at the Miller with a paper hat on their head. So, yeah.
It's all about impact. But academics these days, all about impact. So definitely consider that. That's brilliant. And then there's also Eve.
Yes.
What drew you to Eve?
Eve, well, so Eve is the one, I'm still working on her quite a bit. I figured we had to have Eve, Adam and Eve being banished. Well, actually, before that you have Satan, and I almost did Satan because obviously he was one of the first biblical characters to be banished. But I thought, I also was very aware that I wanted to play some women.
Would be nice.
Yeah, and at this point, I think I decided I wasn't doing Mary Queen of Scots as well. I at one point had both, and it's like, well, then I got rid of Mary Queen of Scots, and then I was like, well, actually, it turns out Eve is now like the only woman in the show, apart from the obvious me, but like I'm being men the rest of the time. So Eve has now kind of come to represent like all women, so she's, and in that has become like a very feminist, like, but sort of punk feminist, like none of this, oh well, you know, we can have, you know, it's not about man hating, she hates men, like she's, which sometimes you do have to, present company, you know, outside, but sometimes it's a lot of it is about her fight against the patriarchy and her guilt, because a lot of what feminists are fighting against and the way the patriarchy was able to be created often comes back to the story of Adam and Eve, and it was Eve that was tempted and was the whole reason for the fall of mankind, and that's why she has painful childbirth, and like that's the reason for everything, even though it was made up. Like it's just, so it makes sense for her on the one hand to be extremely guilty about that, and then on the other hand to be extremely angry about that. So her whole thing is that she's just been wandering since like the dawn of time, and is like got a bit of a drinking problem. And it's just like she's just like, fuck it, I don't care. And yeah, so it's at one point it was very much me trying to get the audience drunk, and I brought like a bottle of whiskey to the show, and was getting, and sometimes, but this is the thing, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I did it at a stand-up night. It's funny, Eve, I found, often works better at nights that are more skewed towards stand-ups. I think sometimes because she's quite dark and quite negative and quite grumpy and quite angry, where there's, for good reasons, improv is usually a lot brighter and a bit like, hey, we're not gonna get angry at each other. Whether stand-ups really are the opposite of that, and they're like, oh, I hate the world. Don't we all just hate the world? So sometimes she works better in that atmosphere, especially because if other stand-ups before have talked about things that are shitty, and then I've been able to be like, well, that thing happened because of the patriarchy. And the whole idea was like, I'd give whiskey to people who wanted to shout a rave against the patriarchy, and it was stuff like someone being angry about, not angry, but someone gave a in their stand-up, it was Heather Shaw actually, who does improv too, and talking about her old PE teacher giving the period talk and how awkward that was, and just like how horrible that set her up for like teenage life. And I was like, that was patriarchy, making it a shameful thing to do a natural thing, and your PE teacher who's completely unequipped because she's a woman to give you that and then someone was like, woman in the audience was like, what about you? She was like, I hate my friends' kids. And I hate that people keep asking me when I'm going to have kids, and I'm like, say no more, have a whiskey. And so it kind of went, so that was quite fun, and so sometimes it's quite fun getting people on the side of that, but I'm still working on how I'm presenting that, because as I say, sometimes it's not always worked, and I do have a bit of, I talk about the story of Adam and Eve from Eve's perspective. So I talk about it as if Eve is a stand-up, talking about the shitty thing that happened to her, and how ridiculous it all is, and so it's a bit like that, and then it's, chatting to the audience a bit, and then complaining about the patriarchy. And I think now I'm sort of looking at more positive ways to end it, also because I'm wanting to slip in this thing about Amelia Earhart that I had an idea of doing, where I basically I don't know, I feel is, when you have one of these ideas and you're like, I'm worried that that's a joke that's been done. Yeah. So I'm trying to look back over things I've listened, and I'm like, do I know this? But basically I had this idea once that I wanted it on the screen to be like, Amelia Earhart she wasn't exiled, she disappeared in 1933 or something like that, and has never been seen since. Can you find Amelia Earhart? And then the lights come on, and I'm wearing a flying jacket but with a lampshade on my head. And then the lights go on, and it's like, where is Amelia Earhart? And the lights come on, and I'm hiding behind a fridge or something. And I feel like that, I find that highly amusing. Yeah. And Mike from Glitch was like, just put it in the show, it doesn't matter that she's not exiled or whatever. And I was like, well, maybe I could do that at the end of Eve, because I wanted to do a PowerPoint of great women sort of thing, and maybe I could have her, because she was a really interesting, courageous woman. And then filter into that, but I'll see how that goes. I'll see if I can work out if it's. I just don't know where, and I'm worried that someone's made that joke before, even though it seems really surreal.
Yes.
But I'm working on. So that's what I'm working
That's
on
lovely.
right now.
That's hilarious.
With Eve. And I'm going to be doing Eve. I'm doing a preview show. I'm doing 2 preview shows. So I'm doing one the 18th of June, which I'm sharing with my friend Simon Jablonski, who's doing half an hour of his stand-up. And he's asked me to do the other half-hour slot. So I think I'm going to do Eve at that. Because it's more of a stand-up thing going on anyway. And I think I might do a bit of Dante, a bit of Eve at that. And then I'm doing my full preview 16th of July. So that's the next time I'm doing Eve. I don't know when this is going out.
It's going out on Wednesday.
It's going out on Wednesday, so be there on the 16th of June to find out if I've worked out what I'm doing with Eve yet. Or if you just want to rant about the patriarchy to a woman with leaves on her boobs. That's a lot of it too. It's just like...
Are they French leaves?
They're from Finchley Road.
Right.
I steal them from someone's garden.
That well-known Garden of Eden of London.
Well, this bush kind of goes out onto the street, so I feel it's fair game. And I swear I've been doing Eve now since the start of this year, and every time I get the leaves fresh from there on the way to the tube station to get the Jubilee line. Because it's authenticity. It's very important to me that the leaves are real. Even though I'm not a biblical character, the leaves must be real. Same as the paper hat must be French.
Is there not a problem, though, with the changing of the seasons? Is there not going to be some seasons where you're not going to be able to do Eve? You're not going to be able to get the leaves from this particular tree.
Funny you should say that. I did have a bit in that when I did this, actually, because it was early January, and there were lots of Christmas trees on the floor, so I took bits of people's Christmas trees and stuck it in my hair, and it had been my plan to use seasonal things, but it was just like I couldn't be honest. But then I did make a joke that night in the show about I was going to make this seasonal, but you really don't want holly stuck to your tits. Actually, no, because one night there was the girl who was hosting was called Holly, and then I made that joke, and I was like, I need to find a way to make that in the show. So then I made it like a seasonal thing. But it does. I don't know if that'll fly in August. Be like, that's a joke she improvised back in January and has decided to keep.
Well, my mum works as a steward at a theatre, and there was a panto that was on at Easter, and they didn't bother changing it. They just went, and now we're going to do the 12 Days of Christmas.
Oh, God. Why was there a panto on at Easter?
That is one question I do not have an answer for, I'm afraid.
Oh my God, that's great though.
Why not?
Why not? People are there. They've paid already.
Let's not make it Easter based. Let's just do the Christmas stuff anyway.
40 days of Lent. Could you with me?
That'll do half an hour's worth of things I worked down.
Well, we could do the 12 steps of the cross. It's like first step the cross, vinegar on a stick. That's really bad.
I feel that while ultimately the Easter story is one of redemption and it has a happy ending, it's slightly less.
Yeah.
It's, there's a lot of a lot of bad stuff before we get to the good. I was trying to think there's a lot of passion before we get to the Christ, but that doesn't really make any sense.
Yay for Catholic school.
Well, that's one of the things with improv is that all these hours I thought I'd wasted turns out it's just material for improv. So it's like,
Yeah, so you went to Catholic school too?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's unreal how much. Well, especially with Eve, that comes in Dante still as well. Yeah, no, it's great, but definitely in improv shows, because the one nice thing about the Bible, the one nice thing about Catholicism, is there's lots of stories and characters.
That is true.
And lots of, because we both get the reference, we know the references, and obviously when you have a shared culture, a shared reference, it's so much more fun.
Yes.
Like last year, I have a godson. Someone gave me that responsibility, even though I'm like, my head teacher at high school told me I wasn't allowed to be a Catholic anymore.
Really?
Yeah, this is a whole other story for a whole other podcast.
No, I'd like to do that. I'd like to do what do we call it? It's the Improv Catholic Excommunicated Podcast, episode 1.
All about being exiled, excommunicated.
Exile. So are you like a Roman Catholic exile then?
In a sense, yeah. And you know what? In some ways, maybe that was had a knock-on effect to why I thought. Not that I was ever like really Catholic. Like my mum's not Catholic. My dad's side of the family is. But I did go to Catholic primary school and high school, and basically in my final year of school, we got this like head teacher and senior management person who wanted to make the school like more Catholic. I was like, we have Sikhs and Muslims and everyone coming here. Like we don't. It's a Catholic school, but it's a state school. Like we don't really do that here. Basically, I wanted to support Amnesty International. And before the summer, they were all like, "Yay, that's cool, that's fine." And then during the summer, Cardinal Keith O'Brien denounced Amnesty International. So it's like, no, you can't do it anymore, because they suddenly were like, we're going to help women in dangerous places have abortions that won't be dangerous. And the Catholic Church were like, no! And I was like, So it was a whole thing, and it basically culminated in my head teacher telling me in front of my whole year and the year below, you can't pick and choose the parts of Catholicism that you follow. Either you're a Catholic or you're not. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm not anymore.
That's a whole lot of guilt I won't have to deal with.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, that was quite a lot for a 17-year-old to have to hear.
Wow.
So I guess that I don't know, that it's a thing of just being like, oh, I thought people were nice. And now I'm seen as, it's not nice being told you're offensive for trying to help people.
No.
So it's a weird thing to come back. And that cardinal then also got exiled. Turns out he was, look him up. Just look him up.
I will do that.
Look him up. He was also against gay marriage in Scotland. Bye! Called it. Anyway,
you were saying.
What was I saying?
You were saying there was about a shared vocabulary.
Yeah.
Was there a specific instance you were talking about? You said you were improvising and.
Oh, possibly. Never mind. But yeah, just basically having, that's the one good thing, the one interesting thing about culture and religion, when you have those stories and characters to fall back on, people know where you are with that.
Yes.
And it's easy to draw upon, especially something that you're meant to take very seriously.
Yes. I have done that when performing, and knowing the occasional Gregorian chant is surprisingly more useful than I ever thought it would be.
Tools out the toolkit. Yeah. Actually, this is a good time. This is something I've wanted to do for years, and I totally forgot about doing. I've always wanted to pull together an improvised nativity play. This Christmas, let's do that. I love the idea of actually asking people, what did you play in your nativity?
First king.
You were first king.
You see, when I did it, they were still kings.
Right, they're not kings anymore?
No, I think they got downgraded to being wise men.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't know if it was a regional thing where I was, but I was definitely first king. Gold. Definitely gold.
You got gold?
Yeah.
Okay, I was an angel,
Yeah.
and apparently there's footage of it, of me, skipping very slowly around. All I was allowed to do was to skip in a circle around the baby Jesus while they were singing the song. But apparently, I would like skip really slowly around the front of the stage and then run around the back of the stage because I was like 4 and I was like, yeah. But yeah, so I kind of like the idea of getting like all improvisers who want to take part be like, hands up if you were a king, okay, right, kings. Hands up if you're an angel, okay, right. And it's just like everyone. We maybe need to format it a bit better, but I just like the idea because we all know the story and just kind of going with it, and it would be kind of like children's nativity, like. Just go for it, and people could do whatever, as long as the story, the greatest story ever told, gets told. But I just think that would be really funny and just like calamitous and is that a word?
Yes.
And yeah, so we should do that this Christmas.
I think that sounds a marvellous idea. I wonder if we would be able to find out about psychologically about the improviser based on what role they were cast in the nativity play.
Yeah.
So, would there be many Jesuses and Marys?
Oh yeah, because we were probably...
Or were they the cool kids and they got into acting or had proper jobs?
They were all the attractive kids.
I feel there's a hole being dug, but I feel we're both digging it here. We're digging it together.
But this is, I think, a lot of comedians in general, quite often, while they're all super sexy now, probably at one point didn't feel like they were the most attractive ones. So
because that's why they needed a sense of
that's
humour.
why they needed a sense of humour. But yeah, and also there are no small roles, just small actors. So if you're an angel and you skip.
Yeah.
And if you're third king, what would that be? Myrrh?
Gold. It's all about gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
And no one really knows what myrrh is, so I reckon that's third king. And the shepherds all just gave sheep, right?
Well, they gave. I don't think this is in the Bible.
Was it not?
Well, the thing is,
it just needed more rules for the kids.
Yeah, and I think the shepherds. Well, technically, I don't think. Actually, let's not even. I have been slightly reading up on the Bible. Because,
oh, really?
Well, because when I was told it as a child,
right,
it's a bit like James Bond, right?
Okay. I'm with you somehow.
In that, there's lots of things in James Bond that I thought this will make sense when I'm an adult and I'm grown up and I understand about things. And then you watch James Bond films as an adult and think, nope. Makes no sense.
Still ridiculous.
Much like the Bible,
right.
I thought, when I'm an adult, I'll understand what's going on a bit more, it'll make a bit more sense.
Yeah.
Not so much.
No, I get what you mean.
So I moved around a lot as a child, and so I was taught religion by lots of different people, and it was their contradictions between what they said that alerted me to the fact that something might be up.
Yeah.
So going back and reading the Bible and sort of commentaries, and I find that sort of fascinating because it's probably the oldest story that I remember. It was kind of the first, I don't know if it's the first, but very sort of mythic kind of, I don't know, it had a really big effect on me. So now going back and reading it as an adult, I'm like, it doesn't say what I expected it to say, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, I get you. I maybe should get you on to help me write Eve. With some material.
We haven't talked about Lear, King Lear. You're doing King Lear. Is he in the
Yes, yes, he is. So that I'm working on just now, and I'm employing the help of Mike, because he's going to make a puppet for me to be Cordelia. So King Lear, I'm doing all of King Lear, which is actually, the play I think is usually about 3.5 hours.
At least.
I'm going to do it in less than 3 minutes, is the plan. It's also part, so I was like, I should reread King Lear, and I bought a new copy of it. I was reading like the intro notes, and it was like, for many years, King Lear was deemed impossible to perform because of the scope from environment to emotion. Like, apparently it was just so wide in scope that people were like, it's impossible. to put on this play, and I'm like, oh, so wow, I'm gonna still do it though. I'm sure it's not gonna be under 3 minutes, but you know when you're writing your fringe blurb in February, you're like, yeah, doing it in 2 minutes. Well, that's also like a neo-futurist thing as well. Like they do everything in 2 minutes, and I'm like, I love the neo-futurists. So it's like, yeah, I'll do it in 2 minutes. But yeah, I'm doing it with puppets.
Brilliant.
And some audience participation.
Lovely.
And a very, very abridged script, which I've started working on, which is there's some of the actual Shakespeare in it. Some of it you wouldn't know because it's quite...
Is out vile jelly in there?
Yes.
Nice.
This is where it's really silly. A lot of what I wanted to do is I wanted to make use... So there are various props. My sister and I have this list of, like, props we have to buy each other throughout our lives. So, like, she got me a rubber chicken from New York, and I got her glasses, nose, and mustache. She also wants one of those top hats that, like, pop out.
Oh, yeah. I want one of those now. I've not
Yeah,
thought about it, but
they're
now...
opera hats, apparently, is what they're called. 'Cause you used to fold them up when you went to the
Yeah.
opera and put them behind your seat. Yeah, and then you went, and they just went, boop.
Wow.
There's a man at Spitalfields who sells that.
Nice. That's a little tip.
There you go. No, I shouldn't have told people because now they're all going to buy them. He only has like 2, and I'm like saving up to buy one for my sister. Anyway, these are the problems I have with being, but yeah, one of the things I really enjoy are those glasses where the eyes spring out.
Yeah.
And I thought...
Sort of googly eyes.
Googly eye things that come out in
Yes,
springs.
yes.
So I thought, King Lear. So I've bought like a bunch of those. They break very easily though. So at some point you can put them on someone and be like, Gloucester! I was wearing, when we were taking pictures for my poster, I put them on because I thought, well, King Lear can wear them because in this version of King Lear, it's King Lear's playing everyone pretty much. But I'm wearing this big grey beard, fake beard, and a grey wig, and a paper Christmas cracker crown, and a dressing gown, but with the glasses on as well. Like it didn't look human. It looked too scary. And Rebecca Liebener, the photographer, who's wonderful, we were looking at it and she's like, it looks like you look like a giant puppet, and I was like, yeah, maybe not. Just keep to the glasses. But yeah, so that's King Lear.
I'm a man more sinned against than sinning.
I gotta write that one in. You know more about King Lear than I do. Again, do you want to help me with this?
Yeah, I certainly do, but the first half anyway, when I went to a performance at Stratford-upon-Avon at school, me and Brian Lee nipped out at the interval and went to the pub for the second half, so who knows how it ends.
Yeah.
Badly.
Brian Lee,
Who's my best friend at school.
Oh, see, I love a 4-name surname of like people you don't know. It's like there's no way I know Brian Lee, but I'm glad I know both his full name. It makes it seem more real. There's nothing better than a full name, especially when it's something like Brian Lee.
Oh, Brian, where are you now? Why did we grow apart?
Oh, maybe this will bring you together. You should come see King Lear. I'm going to be doing King Lear at Glitch Night at the end of July.
Come to that, Brian.
Come to that.
It's been too long. We'll
yeah.
finally find out what happens
At the end of
at
King
the end,
Lear.
and there's still time to have a drink afterwards.
Yeah.
It's the best of both worlds.
I mainly perform in pubs. So plenty of time to do both.
I mean, that's a lot more convenient than the theatre in Stratford-upon-Avon. Not a pub.
Maybe the Royal Shakespeare Company will see my show and think, this girl knows how we should move on. And they'll hire me, and then I can quit my day job.
Nice, yes.
And be a Shakespearean actor.
What an amazing
Yeah.
what an amazing episode this will be. If I'm reunited with my own school friend and you join the RSC.
Wouldn't it also be brilliant if my production of King Lear is what launched me as a classical actor?
It becomes a definitive one, and now people can't do it because it's just been done to perfection already.
Yeah, already done. Can't beat Charlie B. Martin's, Glenda Jackson. Nah.
So you've mentioned Glitch.
Yes.
Glitch and Mike Hutchison.
Yes.
How did you get involved with Glitch?
I auditioned and I got in, and ever since then I've been involved.
Brilliant.
That's it. I hadn't seen them before I auditioned.
But so you thought, oh, puppet's brilliant, I can do that, or
Yeah, I moved down to London 2014 to do a course at the National Film and TV School, sponsored by Channel 4, in writing and producing comedy. And on that course was Charlie Dinkin, who at the time was in Glitch. She also subsequently left that course because it wasn't for her, but I'd already taken out a loan from Barclays, so I had to complete it. Not that no, I learned a lot in that course. But she was like, yeah. So I met her on that course, and she knew that I did improv. And she was like, oh, we're holding auditions for this improv group I'm in. It's an improvised puppet show. You should come along. Just email Mike your CV or whatever. So I emailed Mike. Like, hi, I love improv and puppets. Can I come? And he's like, can you give me some more information?
So that was your improv CV. I love improv and puppets.
Well, then I wrote back to him being like, I've been doing improv for 8 years. I coached a team. I've auditioned for that team. I've been to the Fringe 3 times with them, done full runs, had a successful show with Blindmerg. And then I've coached them subsequently, and now I'm doing this course. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, you can go.
I mean, if you didn't love improv and puppets, that's probably a definite no.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not putting my words in his mouth, but if you don't love both those things, Glitch is probably not for you.
Definitely. So I think after I told him about Blind Mirth and everything, he's like, oh, okay, I get you. And then I auditioned, and he was like, great. Me and another girl got in, who I met only at the audition because she was Welsh and then got a part in a Welsh sitcom or something. So she went back to Wales. But yeah, and then ever since then, so that was coming on 3 years ago now.
Wow.
And yeah, still with Glitch.
So what have you learnt through doing improv with puppets?
It's been really interesting. I won't lie, it was quite hard at first. Obviously, I've learned a lot about puppetry. I had very little to no experience with puppets before,
right.
But Mike and Yeston, who's in the group as well, is a professional puppeteer, and Sean Garrett, who's a professional puppeteer. I got a lot of insight from them, and Mike trained me and stuff. And the first few shows, I think it took me a good few months of being feeling quite restricted from the puppets at first, because you want to just go and do improv, and I felt like, oh God, I've got to focus on this puppet thing right now, and it just felt limiting. But then once I realized, oh no, wait, this is completely, actually, there are no limits, because you're a puppet. You're not you're puppets, and you can be as big and scary as you like, you can be as, sexy as you like, you can be as small and weird as you like, you can, jump on someone's shoulders, you can, fly, you can do anything as a puppet. It's, stuff that you can't do. You're out with is a very Scottish word. It's not a wrong word. Scottish word. Bringing it to the London improv scene. But lots of English people look at me being like, out with isn't a word, darling. You're out with the confines of your own body. Which is the thing that kind of drew me to improv in the first place, is that, if I want to play a cowboy, I can, and blah, blah, blah. But even still in improv, quite often or see you, sometimes depends who you're performing with, they can be like, oh no, you're a woman in this scene or whatever. And it's or sometimes it is just hard to be, if you're telling an epic narrative where you need to have a big scary monster or a really malevolent character, you can't, you have to be way bigger than yourself, and there's only so much sometimes you can do with your human body doing that on an empty stage. With 2 chairs, it ends up being a lot of people standing on chairs shouting. Whereas with a puppet, there's so much more theatre open to you as well. So you can have a puppet slowly rise from somewhere that you wouldn't expect, and they can be huge and monstrous, and you can play multiple characters at the same time, and you can throw them around, and yeah, so I like how it's like the thing I love about improv generally, about having no limits on you based on what you look and so forth, and then broken again, sort of upped more, because you're really embodying whatever puppet you pick up, and you're making, and there's no characters, no one knows what that character is going to sound like. You're going to make it sound like this, and you're going to make them be like this, and it's quite liberating, I guess, as an improviser, to just kind of be a completely different shape.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what I have learned from Glitch, is that you can be out with your own visual self. So yeah, I recommend it. I generally recommend trying lots of different things, basically. And that's one thing that can help you with other things. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yes. Okay, so time for the big final question. The big final
Oh, right,
question.
are we almost done?
Well, we can carry on for a long time. I'm happy to
We
see
don't need
it.
to put it out. Could
Well,
get another beer.
I think with podcasts, the beauty is you can do an hour and a half, and it's not a TV format where it has to be half an hour of efforts or anything. So, well, what else would you like to talk about?
No.
That wasn't
Ask me your final question.
So, what would you say was a classic Charlie V. Martin move?
Oh.
What do you do? And people go, hey, classic Charlie V. Martin. That's what we expect to bring to the show.
Oh no.
Or
I kind of think it's quite sad if there's something like that. It means I'm not versatile enough.
well, the idea being that the listeners can go, oh yeah, that's a good thing. I could do that, and I can make that a classic me thing. And it also means that now we've identified it on the podcast, if people have this default go-to, they can no longer go to it, because everyone that's listening to the podcast, however many that may be, will be going, that's your classic move.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a trick question.
It's a bit of a tricky question. I guess I need to it's the improv I enjoy doing the most when I'm feeling most comfortable is I tend to be quite, oh god, it's hard. I like just sort of going where the fun is and just being big with that, I guess. Just sort of doing sometimes the first thing that comes to your head, even if it's silly, just doing that silly thing and just really going for it. Rather than overthinking it, just going straight forward and doing it and not thinking about, oh, well, you gotta follow this rule or this saying or this, which I have issues with. I think it's just being yourself and doing what you think what you want to do in that moment and what feels right in that moment. Whether that's just getting a weird puppet on stage and going, I love law, or just being like, I'm gonna skip now because I feel it needs that energy, or I don't know if that's a signature move. People like my face. I get a lot of people saying that's a very Charlie Martin face.
Really? Wow.
Of being like, hey, I do say way a lot. Maybe that's it. Just coming on and being like, you've got it. I like sort of communal sounds. I like just making sounds at people and people joining in on sounds. I guess being quite physical. I'm very physical. Not being embarrassed to kind of go outside your box. I'm doing, for the people at home, I'm making a large star shape with being just like, limbs are part of you.
I mean, you are making the star shape, but you could just say, I'm making a star shape and not make it, and I would not tell them that you weren't doing it.
Well, then that's lying.
Well, yes, I suppose so.
And not me. I guess I'm very physical and just kind of, I like being physical and bringing the joyfulness up, bringing things bright and up. I think of words. I'm thrusting my hands in the air, people at home. Yeah, just not thinking too much inside, just being part of the room. Where, you know, the room is here, I'm in it. That's my advice. Be part of the room. That was a very long answer to what should have been probably quite a simple question.
That was a good answer.
But, you know...
You have a problem with rules?
No, I don't know. I just have... See, this is where I'm going to make enemies, isn't it? Because I never trained anywhere to do it. I never studied at any improv school. I've been doing it for like almost 10 years now. I've been very, very lucky that the situation I had was I had 5 years at uni where we were doing a show every week and rehearsing all together twice a week. And, you know, we'd get new people each year and you were coaching each other and being coached from the people above. And I think it was I'm very privileged to have been that to be my introduction to improv, because it also meant that I got many years of crap improv out the way. Not that I don't say that still happens, but like, you know, I got to practice a lot, and I sometimes feel, since I've come down to London, even though, because I remember thinking, oh, I wish it was like America, where like if I went to, people would know what UCB is, and people know what Second City is, and my American friends that were by Murph would say, no, be glad that you don't have that in London. It sounds great that you can go do all these shows and do all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, actually, now that I think of it, more and more I think about it, sometimes when I felt not part of the community, it's because people have been like, oh, well, I've trained with this, or you've got to do this, or you've got to, they quote someone or say something, and I'm like, okay, but is that helping you? Like, is that helping me? Like, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do courses or workshops. Of course, I've done a couple of workshops and things, and I think they're great. But, you know, it's all about like, oh, we have to do this format, and we have to think of this crazy new format, or we have to do this kind of improv. And you don't really have to do anything. You've just got to do the basics, practice the basics well, and enjoy it and have fun with each other. And it's kind of like, you know, sometimes people, I worry that maybe that's why it's like, I don't want to be like, oh, this is my signature thing, because people might say, oh, well then I'm not physical enough as an improv, I'm not very physical at all, or I can't be physical, maybe maybe they're in a wheelchair or something, you know, like, and I don't want anyone to think that they therefore can't do improv the same way, you know, like, there are lots of different things to do. Obviously, everyone can bring out something with it. I feel like I'm going in a ramble. I'm sorry. But yeah, basically I'm just like, you know, just have fun, make people laugh. That's what they've paid for. And be respectful to each other. But yeah, so yeah, I feel like I say I'm quite a yes, I am a practical, physical person. But don't worry if you're not as physical as me. Or sometimes improv can be joyful and sometimes it has to be serious, and you know, that's how improv works. It's whatever it is in the room at that time, so be in the room. Be part of the room.
Wise words.
Yeah, you don't have to do what people tell you. As long as you're not being a dick to your fellow improvisers, just do whatevs. And like that, I'm shunned. Exiled. I would coach people in that.
Not for the first time, and you have experience of exile in your show, so it all ties together nicely.
Yeah, just, you know, find your thing, and I'll happily help people boost that. But you don't have to do things the way I do things. Because I'm weird, you don't want to do me. Still, if anyone wants coaching, I'll come along, it'll be fun. Seen a lot of improv.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, is that good? Is that enough? Are you going to be late for your next one? Hopefully they'll be more succinct and actually answer your questions.
Answering my question.
And be less. Hopefully it won't be as Catholic.
Well, I feel I shared more than I usually do.
Yeah, I'm glad though. I'm glad. That's what improv and audience participation's about. It's connection.
Connection, yes.
Yeah.
Um,
I like to connect. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the thing I do. I talk to people a lot.
That's good. That's good. You listen, and it's not about answering my questions anyway.
Oh, is it not?
Podcast.
Oh, okay.
It's just me showing that I've listened and encouraging the other person to talk more.
Nice. That's good improv. Good improv.
Yeah.
Listening and encouraging. And saying yes to the thing that's... Maybe I'm a bad improviser though, then, if I'm not answering your question. But generally, the rule is you're not supposed to ask questions in improv. Except for the fact you totally can ask questions in improv, because that's how life is. People ask questions.
Yeah, and I think when you're a beginner, it's when you're asking questions.
Of course,
in
no.
a certain way.
I'm just being, no, that's 100% true. Yeah, listen to rules. They are good.
It's like chemistry. It's like when you learn chemistry, you start learning chemistry, and then it turns out that all the stuff you were taught isn't really true. It was just...
Wait, what? I never studied chemistry, so I assumed they all knew what they were doing.
Well, I sat next to Christian Cabral.
Yeah! Christian, is he friends with Brian Lee?
They sort of work because they were both friends with me. They
You were the glue.
I was the glue.
Yeah.
And he was very good at chemistry, so I mainly copied from him.
Yeah.
Not really in touch with him either.
Yeah. Damn it. Gotta get this podcast out to the world. Get your friends back.
Well, I don't think I've got, new friends since. I mean,
Yeah.
Are you still friends with people you went to school with?
Yeah, kind of. Who have I not spoken to in a while? Katrina Jury.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my best friends from school. She's in Canada now. I should call her.
Yeah.
Maybe she knows Brian Lee's. Is any of this going in the podcast? I hope so. People listening at this point still are diehard improv fans. Here's a new rule. If you're not listening at this point, you're not allowed to perform. You gotta listen to this point to prove that you care more about improv than other people.
Because it's all about a competition. Who cares the most?
I should probably let you sign off. I'm enjoying myself too much though.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed myself also very much.
Yeah, let's do this again.
Let's do this again.
Maybe we record and we don't have to put it out.
It would just be nice. It's nice because sometimes I have really nice conversations with people.
Yeah.
And I think, oh well, I wish I could have recorded that because it'd be lovely to hear it again.
Yeah.
But somehow, if you're not doing a podcast, people frown upon you to say, I think we can have a really excellent chat tonight. Do you mind if I record it so I can enjoy it again later?
Maybe this could be your thing.
I just feel that somehow society frowns upon that.
Yeah, maybe.
But at least with this podcast, I've enjoyed our conversation as it happened, and then I can enjoy it again later.
Or we could always just chat more.
That would be nice.
Yeah, because I think this is the longest we've ever spoken.
It is, yes.
The longest I've spoken, I think, to anyone in quite a while. So probably why I've not been very good at the talking bit.
You've done very well with
Thank
the talking
you.
bit.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm waving.
So am I. I wasn't waving when I said that. I didn't realise that was a lie. And having spoken to Charlie, I realised that I shouldn't lie on the podcast.
No. Now we're both
Now we're
waving
both
at the
waving.
microphone because that
Bye.
helps.
I made this.
That's improv!